We're gonna start in a second. Just want to put in my headphones. I'm gonna start in a second. So this is the Sausage Sports Club weekly update. I do this every week to tell you about the game and where it's at and what's coming next couple weeks. I do this for 3 reasons. One is I think it's useful, especially for new developers or students, to see how a commercial game is made, like what all the steps are involved in that, and how it affects me, and like if I go crazy as I do it, stuff like that. It's also obviously a marketing thing of like, if I don't talk about the game, no one's gonna know what it is. And then the third one is kind of a selfish reason of kind of archiving my process, so in 5-10 years I can go back and look at, how did I make games in the past, what did I learn from making that game, where was I at specifically, when did I learn this specific technique or whatever, or idea that I use now. And so I feel like it's useful for all those reasons. So that's what this is, that's what I'm going to do. Last week I didn't do a stream because I was playing the new Mario, and that's, I don't know, that's my bad. I was really excited for it to come out, and I thought it was going to be a lot smaller than it was, and then I'd be able to kind of get my fill of it, or play until I was disinterested enough in the first like day or two, like the Friday and Saturday that it came out. That wasn't true. So I felt like, rather than kind of continuously distract myself every day with Mario, I was going to try to just like rush through the rest of it and get back to work on Monday. I've ended up playing a little bit every day, I think, since then, but I'm kind of over my kind of lock on it that I had those couple days. Anyway, that means that I've got some stuff to talk about from then too. So I'm gonna kind of, as I've had in the most recent past like month of weekly updates or whatever, I have an idea I want to talk about this week on top of like the kind of things that I did, and so I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna try to go through the things I did the last 2 weeks kind of quickly and maybe like in an abbreviated way, so that I can talk about that idea and how it relates to the last 2 weeks of development. So the first thing is Tiny Tokyo. I showed you this before. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but I kind of did the last couple of things that are required of making a map in Sausage Sports Club. Notably, and I don't think I've shown this in streams before, let me switch the collision layer on. Okay. All the maps have kind of invisible walls that are, in some maps there's actually like a physical structure that's like blocking you, and you couldn't jump that high to get out if you wanted to. In some of the maps it's less clear. In this map, like, you could, if I didn't have this wall here, you could just get up and run away, like run up Mount Fuji or like jump into the water or whatever. But I want to limit the size of the map and limit what people do, just because I know what the most fun way to play the game is. Welcome, Spastic Chihuahua. I like that spelling of Chihuahua. And so I put up these walls and also a ceiling, just to keep players in the fun part, so they don't get distracted by like the unfun stuff that's outside. And so I had to set that up, and that's I do that in every map, and I'm eventually gonna have to do that in the overworld, and it feels a little bit like a design failure, because everybody hates invisible walls, and wouldn't it be cool if we could just never have them and everything was just super clear, and you design in such a way that like everything visually matches the collision or whatever. But it just kind of didn't, in this game at least, I didn't figure out a way to do that, and so I'm kind of falling back on invisible walls. And in this map I did kind of take the time to make this the power lines that go around the city, just so there was like some semblance of like, oh, this is a clear barrier that you shouldn't go past. So I feel okay about that. Other Tiny Tokyo stuff. This one's maybe a little bit harder to show because it would require maybe a deep understanding of how the paint system works. But on a high level, setting up a map for paint requires using specific types of materials on all of the map. Like only certain materials can be painted upon, and when I lay out a map and I decorate it or whatever, I don't think about that because I want to focus on like what is an interesting look, what's an interesting gameplay space, and then when I finish, I'm like, oh, I have to like go back and do all this stuff. So there's like setting up the materials on everything so that everything can be painted, and that's not any different from like what a regular material workflow is. It just like the shader I use is like a different shader, and sometimes sometimes things look a certain way, and to replicate that with my paint shader, I have to like either tweak the shader or tweak the material a lot, or like add new settings on the material that I didn't have before. One example of that is the railway here. My paint surface previously didn't have PBR in it just because I didn't need it, and I should clarify that it did have PBR in it, but I didn't expose the smoothness and metallic because it just wasn't relevant. So it was still using the standard lighting, but I just was ignoring these two. I didn't expose these two fields, and that, that's super easy, so no big deal. Anything else interesting about the paint process? Something you'll notice when you play this in paint mode is that the dynamic buildings aren't paintable. Like if there's a building you can break with your face, it's not something that is paintable, and that was something I was like mulling over in my head as I was making the map because I knew this was going to come up as an issue, and I have some ideas about it in case I change my mind about what I might do, and I don't know how much I want to get into these constraints, but I'll try to do it at a high level. Basically, when the way the buildings are set up, they break into different pieces, and that instead of this mesh being always separating into the three pieces, I place them as one mesh, and then place like as children or whatever, I like place the three separate meshes, and when you hit a building and it breaks, it turns off the main mesh and turns on the three separate meshes that have rigid body set up. In paint mode, that's like kind of weird because if I hit something and paint it, I painted a certain part of it, and I painted it a certain way, and if we swap to those pieces and they don't match, or they're not painted, or they're fully painted, that's kind of look really weird. And so like there are a bunch of options to solve that problem, but I chose to just ignore it by not making buildings paintable. And so far as I've played it, it feels totally fine. Like you can still paint just as you would before, and it's still useful to destroy buildings for painting because they cover the ground, and you can't paint that ground section until you break the building, and it's great. So that's most of the stuff I did with Tiny Tokyo. There's other stuff like I think the car collision stuff I changed a bit. I don't know if I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but the purple section is the area where like ambulances and vans and stuff can drive, and the blue is the sections where the AI can move, but the purple is also space that the AI can move, if that makes sense. That's all I want to say about Tiny Tokyo. That was a big thing. The other big thing that's kind of occupying all of my time these last 2 weeks, and is going to continue to occupy most of my time until the end of the game, I think, is adventure mode, which I've definitely talked about on stream a bunch of times. the very brief version is there's a single player or co-op adventure mode in Sausage Sports Club where you run around this big kind of open space and talk to different characters, and you go on little quests that are meant to reveal reveal aspects of their character, so you get to know them over the course of the game. It's not a story mode, it's more of a adventure mode, because there's not a beginning, middle, end story overarching the whole game. It's just like, I'm gonna go on this quest for 5 minutes where I get to know Peter the Eagle or Peck the Pigeon, or what, or I get to know an individual, or I get to know a pair of characters and see how they bounce off each other. And this is a huge undertaking and like a complex thing, and I probably shouldn't have done it. And it's definitely the thing that blew out the scope of the game and has made it will have made it go over into 2018. And but I think it's important, and I might have talked about this before, but I think it's important because it differentiates the game from other local multiplayer games that pretty much only have the multiplayer, or the only interesting part is the multiplayer, or when you go to buy it, the reason you buy it is to play with your friends. And I want to have more than that. So that's that. Basically, I've been the last week or so, I've just been playing through, and as soon as I hit something that's broken or feels bad or doesn't make sense, I immediately like stop playing, and then I go try to fix that thing, and that seems like what I'm gonna do until the game is done, or until the game is like completable, and then I'll try to get outside feedback on it, and then I'll iterate that way. What else do I want to say about adventure mode? I guess I could talk a little bit about quests. So I explained the idea of quests and like their context in the game, but I've basically gone through a few ways of making quests already. The first one was like a graph-based node thing where I thought it would be faster for me to iterate if I set up this system of nodes to write a quest with just like graphs of like, here's some dialogue, connect that to a node that's like go to a place on the map, then connect that to a node that's like wait for the player to get there, and then connect to another node that's like dialogue. And that's a cool idea, and probably would be important if I was trying to make hundreds of quests, and if I had a team of designers who couldn't do any programming, and if I was making something like The Witcher, maybe. I imagine they have a system like that where designers can do code, or maybe they just do scripting, maybe they do what I do. But for me, that didn't make sense because I'm a programmer, and so I had this big graph system that I was like developing this tool and maintaining it and fixing bugs and stuff at the same time as writing quests, and it ended up just being like way more work than it is for me to just write a quest in like straightforward logic. And I'm still developing. The cool idea about that node thing is that I develop little snippets that are reusable all over the place. Like, tell a character to go to a location is like a thing I will use a lot, or setting up dialogue is a thing I'll use a lot, or playing a match with these two characters and with you on the team, that's like a thing I'll use a lot. But that's just like, you just do that in code by default. I've been writing quests in straightforward logic. I've been kind of making this API of like NPC interactions or like quest interactions or whatever, which I would have had to do and also maintain this tool. So it's worked much faster. I think I've talked about all that maybe on stream a little bit, But the new thing that's kind of happened in the last 2 weeks regarding quests is that I had wrote a few quests and kind of wrote them out, maybe like 3 or 4 quests, and I'd taken a break to do Tiny Tokyo after I'd written those quests, and I came back and I was like, these kind of suck. Like, I don't like these. I'm not interested in the characters. I don't feel like I'm getting to know them. They all feel really samey, and so I kind of went back to the drawing board a bit and thought about what makes a compelling quest. And I had one quest aside from those that I thought was successful, and interesting and compelling, and I looked at why that was, and so I can where did my notepad go? So I can go through those, and there's only, I think, 4 or 5 of them, but let me open Photoshop. I'll come back to this. This is the idea thing I want to talk about. Let me zoom in. Okay, quest. Let's do this. Compelling quests. So I should, these are the things that a compelling quest needs. I should learn something about the characters. Learn about characters. If I don't learn anything about the characters, it's just like chit chat, small talk. There's no kind of meat to it. It's not gonna be interesting. The characters are the interesting part of the game, and I want to see how they interact, and through the choices they make, that needs to reveal their character, or nothing's happening. There's no plot. So I need to learn my characters. I want to have a clear conflict. The best way to make a quest keep your attention is to kind of have a clash of opinions, or like goals, you know, desires of the 2 characters, and then you pick a side or are interested in the outcome. And if there's no conflict, or if the conflict is unclear, like it doesn't make sense what they're fighting over or about, then it's just like uninteresting. So that's a big one. And generally those conflicts are most successful when character A wants a thing, character B wants a separate thing, and then those things happen to kind of cancel each other out or get in the way, and so they have a very direct, like, the thing I want is interrupted by you, so we need to play a match. And if it's, even if there's a clear even if there's a clear disagreement, if the 2 goals don't go against each other directly, then it's not as compelling. Learn about characters, clear conflict. Dynamic structure. So this was a really big one that I didn't think of as I was making the quest originally, and this has kind of had maybe the biggest impact, because I knew I wanted to learn about characters. I knew I wanted a clear conflict, but what I didn't realize is that if I make all the quests just like 2 characters standing next to each other talking at each other, and then you play a match and then you come out and they talk a little bit more, if I make all the quests like that, it's not going to be interesting, because everything's going to feel the same, and you're not going to feel like you're doing anything if you don't go from point A to point B, or bring characters from point A to point B, or meet a character somewhere. You know, this kind of stuff makes it feel like you're doing something, like you're taking part in the quest, instead of listening to the 2 characters talk and play a match. That one's good. Punchline. Has a punchline. The game is a physics game. It's meant to be silly and funny. The adventure mode should be an extension of that, of being funny and making people laugh. And if the quests are too serious or too dramatic, then you're kind of playing a different game, and I don't want the adventure mode to feel like a different game than, you know, playing with your friends. Even though it is like it is meaningfully different. Like you have guidance and you have structure, and that makes it significantly different. But I still want you to laugh and like be encouraged to play. And I don't know. I think that is pretty clear. Is that all of them? I remember I merged the other day. I merged two of them that were like too similar. It was like learn about characters, and each character has a clear desire, and those are like the same. Like the desire should be the revealing thing. Compelling quest. I have my notebook. I don't have my notebook here. Oh boy, that's good. I think that's all of them, or like most important ones. Oh nice, we got a host from Will. Thanks, Will. That's really nice. So quests. So in writing quests, I tend to, and writing in general, and even in level design and stuff, my process tends to be very like process oriented. Like I need structure. I'm really good at filling in holes, but I'm not so good at filling in just kind of a blank page. So an example of this, and I'll bring this back to the quest. An example of this is in the overworld, when I knew I wanted to have like 5 biomes or whatever, like jungle, sea, desert, Sportsville / Hollywood. That was great. Like I felt like that was a really compelling structure, but when I actually went to flesh that stuff in, I really struggled because I just had, if you think of like the beach, this is an easy one to look at. Basically what you have is just like this kind of triangular slice of a pizza or whatever. And looking at that, I didn't have ideas about like where things should go, or like what would be an interesting path through it. I needed to kind of like, I needed a shape. I needed a specific shape to fill in. It's like a Monster Inc. hat. No. Hey Will, thanks for bringing the train. Welcome everyone. For the new people who don't know what we're looking at, this is Sausage Sports Club. It's a physics game about floppy animals playing sports. Got my cast of characters here, and these dudes flop around. I'll interrupt what I was talking about for a second just to like give a brief idea of what the game is to these new people. Nice. That's awesome. What? Okay. Yeah, so the game is like I said, it's a physics sports game, but there's a bunch of different sports to play. This is soccer. We're doing 8-player right now, so there's a bunch of us. Oh man. Let's go. Go back to mode select. So that's soccer. I want to take out some characters. There's also a bunch of other modes. Capture the flag is cool. Thanks, dude. Yeah, so in the game it's like 3D platformer. You can dash, jump, you stomp. And you use those same mechanics to play all the sports. So that's the idea of the game. Okay, I'm gonna jump back to what I was talking about before. This stream is where I basically talk about what I did the previous week, what I'm doing the next week, and then if I have any from the last week, if I have any ideas about that can be generalized or abstracted to game development in general, I try to share those and talk about how that's influenced the project that week. So yeah, I was talking about how it's hard for me to fill in a lot of detail without starting at a high level and kind of roughing in high level details, and then slowly as I rough in more high detail or more fidelity detail, then I can get down to the lower stuff. So in the overworld, I knew like with this slice of the beach or whatever, I knew I needed to have an entrance to an arena. I knew I wanted to have some toys. I knew I wanted to have like this tetherball pole where you can play tetherball, and this swing set where you can, you know, jump on the swings and stuff. But I didn't know what the structure was. I didn't know like, yeah. And so what helped me was to kind of rough out this path of like, you can see where my mouse is, like when you enter, there's like a path going left to the beach or a path going right, and then from the left path you can branch off there. And once I had that kind of shape, then it was like, okay, now I can imagine where things are going to be. And then once I know where things are going to be, then I can start roughing in like where there are little detail rocks, where's this side pond going to go, where can I put some docks, and like, you know, and that helps me a lot. And that's since I had that kind of realization, that's kind of become my process. Data Blaze, welcome. I am in an office. I work in a co-working space, but I don't really have a team per se on the game. I work with two. I have two contracting audio people and a contract QA person, but it's me like focused on the game all the time, and I do the art, I do the programming, I do the design. But this game wouldn't be possible alone for sure. Like my musician and sound designers have made a huge impact on the game. It would be bad without them. This is in Chicago. I assume you came from Will's stream. I live in the same city as Will, and we're friends. IRL. Okay, so let me take this idea of like starting with a big kind of blank page, adding kind of any structure at all to help me like have something to then put details into. And then so talking about quests, this is kind of how this is how I need to approach writing quests, because I'm not like, I can't immediately jump into the little details. I need to like have some kind of structure to look at, and like I need to processize everything so that I can force myself to get stuff done. If I just like sit in front of a page, like a notebook, and like try to write stories or whatever, it's really hard. But if I can think like in this graph, I have like, okay, let me try to like, I'll run through this and try to like see if there's any interesting conflict that pops out to me immediately between two characters. And you won't have this from looking at the this screen, but I have an idea of what all these characters are in my head. So if I like pick a point on this chart, I can say like, oh, Peck and Young, like they might have this interaction that might make an interesting quest, and then I can, from that point of like using this chart as a tool, I can kind of like jump to that space and then like jot an idea down, and maybe that will like give me an idea for a quest. So that's kind of my process. Yeah, I'm hoping to have in the overworld. I'm hoping to have points of interest isn't really the right word, but like toys or like playthings placed all over the place so players can, um, as they're going from point A to point B or just exploring or whatever, they have a lot to do and they can stop and get distracted by things and have fun. So that's quest. I feel like I'm like jumping between things a lot. Okay, other stuff I did the past 2 weeks, a lot of little polish stuff that kind of you'll know this if you work in games or have worked on a game, that the longer you work on something, the more likely it is that you'll notice things that are wrong as you go, and maybe you realize like later like an easy way to fix something that you didn't like previously. So an example of this is like the cameras in Sausage Sports Club work through these like big zones. Here's like a box. In this box, I define settings of the camera, and when the players move into another box, the camera changes settings to match that other box. That's like the simple version. But sometimes when I move between boxes, the camera would like zip over really fast, like catch up to what the other box wanted you, or the other box wanted the camera to be, and that was because I was moving the camera through linear interpolation, which I'm not going to get into the detailed math of that, but basically the idea of that is, and the way I was using it is, the idea of the way I was using it is the farther away you are from your target, the faster you're going to move towards it. So you like, if I'm going from point A to point B, I like quickly move over and then slow down as I get closer. And for this camera zone thing, that meant if the camera wants me to be like where I am now, and then I enter this box and the camera wants me to be way over here, that means I'm gonna like zip over there really fast instead of kind of continuously moving that way at a fixed rate. And so I kind of finally realized this was the issue causing a bunch of like camera popping and like zooming in weird directions and stuff. So I finally realized, oh, I just need to move my camera at a fixed rate instead of linearly interpolating. So that helped. So that's a polish thing, and the kind of general application of that idea is as you go, you'll notice like little things that are messed up, and you want to fix them, but you don't know how yet, or you don't know the exact cause of the problem yet. And as you do other stuff, for me that's adventure mode right now, you'll realize like, oh, this is how I fix that. Another example of that is in my camera, I have this post-processing effect, or this group of post-processing effects. And okay. Let's look at this. My FOV on this camera is a little bit weird right now. That's pretty much what it would be in game. Anyway, so I have this post-processing effect, and if I flicker it on and off, this is on, this is off, you can see a bunch of stuff changes. So the idea of this is that I've got a bunch of different image effects kind of stacking together to make this cool effect, or make the game look better, basically. Conclusion. I'm using anti-aliasing, bloom, color grading, and a vignette. You can see the vignette around the corners. It's just kind of like a square-shaped gradient of towards like black. I might do a little bit of blue. No, just black. And anyway, to go back to my example of like, you'll notice things don't look as good as they could, and if you just iterate on it, it'll look better. Over the course of the game, I've thought like, I've seen other games or effects in movies that make me think like, oh, what if I tried to do color grading, or what if I tried bloom, or what if I tried this vignette? And then I try it, and a lot of the times it doesn't look better. Sometimes it does look better. In this example, you can see I kind of like push everything towards blue a little bit, especially blues, like you can see up in the sky especially. That's only a recent, this past week, I've made that change. I've tried color grading in the past, but I never liked the outcome that much. So that's like another thing I've done this week. I don't want to get into AI improvements much because that will get kind of technical. And I would have to explain a lot of things to like get to the stuff I was fixing, but I basically improved player pathing or AI pathing so that they could better get to a player without falling into hazards or like getting stuck on things, and they know now better to jump over things. So that's all polished stuff that kind of clicked for me after it going on in the back of my head for a while. Okay, so that's like the gist of stuff I've done the last 2 weeks. There's a lot of like smaller things or like more technical versions of things I described that happened that I'm not gonna get too specific about, just because it would take a long time and probably wouldn't be that interesting. I could keep it a little bit of a higher level. This week I kind of culminated an idea I've been thinking about for a while of game development as a kind of demo over really quick. Yeah, let me do that really quick just so you can see what that's like, and then I'll get into my spiel. Oh, and let me do a quest that actually works instead of one that doesn't work. Let's do no overrides. I'll do, yeah, let's just kill our save and just go straight in. Okay. All right. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention in my earlier demo is that you can swing your head around with the right stick on a controller, or if you're playing on the Switch, you can, and on a single Joy-Con on the Switch, you can just like wag your Joy-Con around to wag your head. Welcome, Polymath. Going to the gym. Yeah, got it. So this is just the tutorial, this isn't like a quest. Whoa, nice. Which PAX was that, Polymath? I haven't been in a while. I'll do full screen. Yeah, so the Baker, the overworld is kind of a... I describe it as like a small open world. But there's lots of toys, and I try to design the geometry so it's fun to play on. even if you don't have like a specific objective. And because you can play the game with your friends, like you can have up to 8 players on screen at once, like messing around. You can, you can create your own fun, or like create games between yourselves, like, oh, let's see who can jump between these pillars the best, or first, or whatever. That's a game I play with one of my friends when we play test. There's a lot of just like test stuff here. Saxophone doesn't work, or I would show you. Ooh. There's a cannon that you can aim. Axe West. Okay, so that would have been the most recent one. Nice. Oh, you're in the Nintendo. Was it this PAX West or previous PAX West? Because this year you would have seen it in the Nintendo arcade. Let me. Yeah, let's go over here. The bakery. You can see a lot of there's like walls to block you off from going to other places. When you start adventure mode, you don't have everything unlocked at first. But as you go, you get more areas, and all the areas have their own toys, and like there's a different arena associated with each area of the overworld. So nice. I hope you had fun. Ooh. This would all be new to you, Polymath, because I didn't show this stuff in that build. Ooh. It's great, man. Let's try a tetherball. And the other thing I didn't mention, I guess, is you get rewarded for playing and exploring in the game. So if you like play tetherball and you win, you like get some of this hat currency that you can use to buy hats, or if you knock the swing over the top. This is actually a lot harder than I'm making it look. Thanks. Let's go to the hat shop. It's worth noting you can't fly around at will like I do. It's just dev controls. Oh yeah. Scout does my tutorial. I don't need to explain. Couple hat tokens. Okay. So when you get those hat tokens from, like, playing in the overworld or exploring and finding new stuff, you come in here and you can unlock hats. This witch hat. What else do we got? Cheese head. Yeah, so this system is inspired a lot by Battle Block Theater. You could just get like hundreds of crazy little heads that just replace the head on your character. There's not quite hundreds of hats, but there's like 60 or so. Yeah, you can come over here and choose what you want. I like Cool Dog. Good, now you're ready to play sports. Cool. Hopefully the game works. Yeah, cool. Okay, so we completed the tutorial now, so there are like quests in the overworld to actually go on and talk to characters and do a little thing. A lot of these are broken, so let me try to remember which ones work. Outfit, that one might be broken. Alright, spits bomb. Oops. Well, oh, there we go. Okay. Your secret. Use this guy. Nice. Yeah, see, the idea of the quest is that, or the conceit behind the quest, I guess, is that in Sausage Sports Club you can't say no to a challenge, and so everybody uses sports challenges to like decide interpersonal conflicts. In this case, Peter's got a secret. Remy wants to know it, so we're gonna, and I also want to know it, so we're gonna challenge Peter together. There we go. That's a good bug. Remy's just like floating on his head. Yeah, so now we actually like enter the map. Nice, we got some bugs here. My player hasn't been assigned to a team. That's good. This is one of the older quests, so I might not have like updated it to match some new changes I made to the quest system. Or I can still help Remy, I guess. See if I can clear a path to the goal. Come on, buds. Oh, nice. Get in there. Yeah. Okay. Fuck. Hey, we did it. Okay. And you also, as you play, you unlock characters and skins. Like every match, you get more of that. Turn to hub. Uh-oh. We got a good bug. And that's where my demo will end because the game is broken here. I think that gives you a pretty good idea what the game is. Yeah. So I guess to continue that quest, you would pop back out to the overworld. Peter would react to losing. He would tell you his secret, and then you would continue on. and Remy would be happy, and then you continue on with your day. So before everybody showed up, I was going to talk about this idea that I've had percolating for a while of game development as a series of increasingly small decisions, and I made like a little visual to help with this, but this idea is it makes sense when you describe it, but it's not really that useful once you have it in most contexts. But I feel like I've found a useful case in which this description is useful as a lens. So to kind of give background, in game development, when you start a game, you start with a really big decision, which is I want to make a game. I'm gonna make a game, and then as you continue to make the game, you make a bunch of smaller decisions that kind of branch from decisions you made before. Like once you've decided you want to make a game, you have to decide. Let me pull up the image. Here's my big chart. Yes, you decide I'm gonna make a game, and then before you can make the game, you have to make a bunch of decisions about it. How much time am I gonna take to make the game? Even if you make this decision, it will be wrong. It's going to take more time than that, but you can approximate to your best ability. You have to decide a genre of the game. You have to decide how much money you're going to use to make the game. You got to decide who you're going to make the game with, the mechanics, the goals, the controls, the tech you're going to use, etc. And these are all really big decisions that affect everything else that comes after and kind of determines what the game will become. But once you make these things, once you make these decisions, it's really hard to, if you go on to the later parts of the game, these are decisions that are like incredibly hard to change and will hurt the game, or if you change these, it makes it much harder to make the game, basically. If you change your core mechanics, once you've gotten down to the like end of the game, then you're going to have to redo much of the game, because so much of the game is based on that early decision of your mechanics. If you set a budget at the beginning of the game, which is like how much money you have to make it, and then at the end of the game you're like, actually I need twice as much money, then that's going to like dramatically change the rest of the stuff, because now you have to focus on getting all that new money, and it's going to take away time from development, and really the decision you made early on was just wrong, and so now you have to go back and like fix it. Goals is another one. Like what are my goals for the game? What kind of, like, do I want it to be something I'm proud of? Do I want it to make me a lot of money? Do I want it to win awards? Like all that stuff creates a different kind of game as you go. Once you have all those decisions, then you can actually start making the game and think about all of these things of who's my audience going to be, like what are the metrics of my controls, like how far can I jump, how fast do I run, what is the art target I'm going for. All of these things are based on and kind of are a result of the previous decisions you made. Yeah, I don't want to go into each one of these because there's so many, but you can see from this that these early decisions, there's not that many of them, but they affect so many later things, and once you have those, before you have a game, you have to make a bunch more smaller, less meaningful necessarily decisions, but still important, and you still have to do them, and they still take time, and so then you've made all your like really big hard decisions, then you have to make your smaller but still affecting a lot of the game decisions, and then you get down to like the minutia, what I think of as minutia, of like individual in the moment. If I'm working on any one of these specific things in the second chunk of the pyramid, each one of those has like a million tiny decisions under it. If I'm doing, just looking at the examples down here, if I'm what's a good example from this? I'm just looking at a lot of text. If I'm doing polish, I know I want to do polish. There's a million decisions under polish. What should the jump VFX look like? How big should this particle be? How long should it last? What texture should I use? Do I need to make a new texture? What color should that be? Like, do I need detail in the texture? There's just a million things, and it's often hard to like jump between these levels of decision making in a game. Like if I like a good example of this is a few weeks ago I decided to finish all the characters and skins in the game, and so I spent about a week, or maybe less than a week, but I decided I'm gonna finish the characters. Here's that in my mid-level. I know what my characters are gonna be. I'm making a decision. I'm gonna finish them. There's gonna be this many. These are what they're gonna look like. And now I'm gonna spend a week making a million tiny decisions about what they should like, about where should this vertex go, like how far should the head bend in this animation, where should the hat be placed on its head for the specific hat. Oh, I can zoom out if you want to take a screenshot. I'm gonna, there's gonna be another screenshot you want to take later, but this is still useful alone, I guess. And this kind of, this idea of this pyramid has been like in my head for a while, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And I knew, it's a funnel of decisions. At the end, you're like doing all the nothing, all the minutia. And at this point in Sausage Sports Club, I've come to the point where I'm like, if I had to place myself on this pyramid on my average like work day or whatever, I'm like definitely down here, which is maybe true for most of the game, but it's very rare that I end up back here. Like all of this stuff is like decided already, like all of these decisions are made for the most part, and what that means is almost all of my time, even more so than is usual in game development, is spent on this minutia stuff. And it's and coming out of that is like expensive, because if I'm like, a good example of this is the hat token, the hat progression thing that you saw earlier, where I like got some tokens to like unlock a new hat. I had already gone through the decision making process of like, a mechanic in my game is going to be that you unlock hats. Like I did that a long time ago. Eventually I got to the point of like, what's the progression like for that? What do the hats look like? What's the UX of getting hats? I made all these decisions, and then I, for doing the hat stuff, I had to do a bunch of like minutia of like, here's what all the hats are, here's the models of all the hats, here's how big they are, here's what color they are, here's where they're placed on characters, here's the building that you get them in, here's what the gumball machine looks like that dispenses them, thousands of decisions. And then I put it in front of somebody and they were like, this is hard to understand. This like percentage thing where I'm like filling up to a meter, 0 to 100%. I don't get it. Could you make it like money, like dollars or something, or tokens? And I thought that was a good idea, and I still think it's a good idea, but it requires me to go back up to basically like delete a bunch of these like little decisions I've made. If I just like put a bunch of X's, that's not really important, but I have to go back up to like this decision stays, progression stays, but the UX changes, and what else? The UI changes, and the polish changes, and it's like I have to go back up, and that undoes a bunch of the little baby decisions and like work I've done, so that I can go back. And this is really like a really costly process, and kind of pushes back my release date, pushes back when I think I'm done, changes a lot of other stuff. So that super sucks. Another thing I want to bring up while I'm on this topic is that there's more going on than this. Like, besides all of this stuff, which ends up being a ton of work and taking a ton of time and a ton of your brain as you're making a game, there's also this part on the right, which is life. Life is happening, and it's not really the same. Like, you don't, maybe you make these like big life kind of decisions of like, where do I want to live, or like what do I want to value and stuff like that. But then within that, everybody's kind of got these big decisions and big ways of spending their time. And I certainly do, but it's you've got to manage all this stuff as you're also managing your game, and they kind of mix together at certain points. Like, at this point in development, where I want to be is like doing all of this. I want to be like in this area, finishing up, polishing, like not making any decisions, just like executing all of the ideas I've already had and like finishing the game. But what ends up happening is like exercise and all this stuff is like interceding this. Like, I need to focus on all of this other stuff that's taking me out of these other things, or out of making the game, and it's often very distracting. But you just have to do this stuff to like exist. And I'm moving and starting a new job soon after the game is done, or coming up pretty soon. So somewhere in here, like I'm not on the black marker. My tablet just busted. Somewhere in this middle section, like logistics of managing an apartment and like and moving and all this stuff, like somewhere in that middle section just like opened up, and I have to like focus on all that stuff now. And so a bunch of like the life work that I had done now is like undone, and I have to like focus on all that stuff. And so I'm trying to think of like how to cohesively explain this. Like, if like previously 70% of my day was like, or 50% if you count sleep or whatever, what was like focusing on this game, now that I'm like doing all this life logistics stuff that's just required, now it's down to like 25%. And there's also an added cost of like switching between these two things often. Like, if I get an email that's like, here's information about the apartment you're looking at, like, you could get it if you like sign today or something, that like completely pulls me out and like removes me from writing quests or doing programming or whatever. Sorry that I say like so much. People don't call me out on it, so I don't think about it. I think it's a crutch as I try to like as I try to figure out what I'm saying. I say words that mean nothing. Is a good one. So as you're getting closer to shipping, as I'm trying to explain, you get closer to this all the time focusing on this last end of stuff, and this is the time when you want to shut your brain off and just execute a million things. And if you have to often like jump back up to this section of like considering, what kind of car do I want? What kind of apartment do I want? Where in the new city do I want to live? When are the movers gonna come? And arrange this like higher level stuff, you're like moving up a level, which requires attention and focus, and is distracting you from being in the head, like not even from doing the work, but from being in the headspace required to do the work. So you have to get back into that headspace of just like executing minutia. Right, yeah, that's a good way to put it. The less decisions, the more you can focus. And so this is where I found the usefulness of this chart of like, this is a bad line, you don't want to cross it because it's expensive. This is a very, very bad line, don't ever cross that because it will cost you a lot of time and money and work. And in the mid section of game development, when you're prototyping and like starting to enter production or whatever, you're going to be doing this a lot, and that's normal. But as you get closer to the end, you want to just like put a wall between this so that you don't end up undoing work that you've already done. Or I think it's useful to leave yourself open to challenge assumptions you have about your game, and like if you want to make the best game possible, you have to be willing to accept criticism and be considerate and think about, if somebody says this part of your game's not working, you have to think about that and like really analyze if it's worthwhile and even possible to go back up a step to like to redesign, and then go back down because it's expensive. So that's kind of the rant I wanted to go on about this chart, and that's where I'm at right now, is doing a lot of this stuff, but also being pulled up to do a lot of like logistics stuff that sucks, especially now to be doing, because it's forcing me to not focus on what I should be focusing on, or at least what I want to be focusing on. Okay, I'm gonna call the stream done, like the weekly update done here. So I'm just gonna wave my hand so that when I'm scrubbing this to find the highlight, I do that. But now I'm just gonna like hang out and answer questions. Okay, polymath. Vigard, thank you. I do appreciate it. Like I said, nobody calls me out, and so I just don't even. It's not even like in my brain to not say like an. It's probably been a month since somebody's actually said something in chat, but I'm sure I just say it a lot. Polymath. I don't find any idea for the main mechanic. What type? I guess you're still at this part of the chart, and that means you have some kind of soul searching to do, and like what type of game you want to make is pretty important to that. Can you tell me a little bit more about your game before I try to advise you? If anybody else has questions or wants to see something about the game, let me know. While we're waiting on more details about polymath, I'm gonna hop back over to the game. I think the next thing I have to do is just write a bunch of quests, unfortunately, which is level 2 of the pyramid. Oh, interesting. You mean like the core, the like thing you're doing when you're streaming. If I was having that sort of problem, what I would do is look at my design goals or design pillars, which I try to do for every game, which is basically a few like maybe like 5 things that I've decided I want this game to be focused on, and then I would, you know, try to derive mechanic ideas from that. So as an example, if your pillar was management only, no action, or turn-based rather than like real time, or passive play or something like that, then you could use that as a filter for mechanic ideas, and it would help you maybe get into the space of thinking about that. Or if your game is trying to make people laugh, then you could try to pick a mechanic that is silly in itself and makes people laugh. But it's kind of hard to. But that's what my process would be, I guess, and that's the best I can advise on that. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna end the stream and eat some pizza. I'm really bad about not saying this at streams, but if you enjoyed the stream, then feel free to subscribe or whatever the Twitch version of following is. I don't give me money or anything, but it'd be cool to have you around next week. Cool, thanks. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'll wait one more minute and I'm gonna head out. And anybody who's like a weekly update regular, go follow Will at William Cheer on Twitch and also Twitter. He was kind enough to send us the train. All right, I'm gonna head out. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the follow. See you next week.